let's change gears now that we're all on. I was talking about, and I didn't mention this to anyone, but Ty, you've got the new. If for anyone that doesn't watch us regularly, Ty jumps on and does machine reviews for us, and he's super engineer minded. He tears things apart and breaks them down, and talks about what he likes and doesn't like about them. But you've got the new Numa 4, which is not actually a pneumatic machine, right? Do you mind? Are you guys cool with like kind of going through it right now and us kind of asking you questions about it?
All right. Yeah. So it's this tiny little guy. The balance is great on this thing. Where we go. There you go. So it's like literally all right in your hand, and you can see. Wow. I only wear a medium glove. Look how tiny this thing is. But like, there's plenty of room. There's plenty of room here for your hand. And one of the things I like about this stainless grip is there's some good weight to it, kind of like we're used to. If you've been tattooing, longer than 10 years, you used to use a nice stainless grip. This thing only has his longest stroke. He's working on a 4mm cam, but this one's 3.6. And the weight of this thing and the function of his cams here, I'll show you these little cams. Try to get it at an angle where you can see.
Yeah, I can see.
The little belly, like it literally pops in and out of the skin 20% of the cycle versus I think it's 50% of the cycle on like more of a direct drive. So you're not hanging in the skin. So it's very coil like in the sense that it just kind of snaps in and out. There's not
That's what caught my attention. Yeah.
There's not a lot of blood. The machine it definitely has a sound. It's not a silent rotary, but it's a really nice audible sound. And audible feedback has always helped me with tattooing when I hear like that little bogging sound in the skin.
Yeah, sure.
So like you start feeling it in your stretching hand. I really like to hear the difference of knowing I've got a good connection, So this weighted grip actually makes me feel like even with a 3.6, the line work drops in really easy. Like I'm using Quadrants 15 round shaders to drop one pass lines with this thing where like you'd have to move your hand really slow with a standard rotary. You can literally just rip like you're ripping with a coil, like high speed. It's pretty great.
That's awesome.
So I got this maybe like a week or so before the shutdown, did a bunch of tattoos with it, but we were already closed by the time I've got this little 2.7, which is more like, I guess you could use it for black and gray and stuff. So I haven't had a chance to use this one yet.
Can you show how they pop in and out?
Oh yeah. So each grip comes with. I've got the aluminum one here too. I haven't tried the aluminum one yet, but it's the machine's going to be a little bit less aggressive without the weight. So I'm assuming this guy for my big bold lines and kind of this guy for everything else. Even though I'm doing color work and everything with this weighted grip over like a 6 or 7 hour session. I don't need that much weight when I'm getting into shading and coloring, so I'm going to probably want to use this one. There's a spring inside here in every grip, stainless spring, and that holds your cam up in place. All right. So that's how you do your adjustment too, by the way. You're just turning the grip up and down to get your needle depth. Mm-hmm. So your cam is up in the machine. No tools. It literally takes you like 2 seconds to change your cam out. Grab the other cam. You literally just drop it in. So inside here, there's a pin on the machine's counterweight. And there's a little slot in the middle there that pin sits on. So this thing drives straight up and down. With every other like rotary style machine that I use, pens especially, I'm always getting walks and little wiggles in line work, no matter how slow and how steady I try to move my hand. And I think it's the hang time in the skin that causes it more than anything. And this thing with that 20%, it's popping in and out of the skin so fast, regardless of how fast you're moving your hand, that the needle's not getting hung up. So the line work is super crisp. Even before these, I was using my Dan Kubins, and I really like the line work with those. But my line work is very dense, solid, and sharp-edged, if that makes sense. It's a super crisp line. And I'm not really sure what about that mechanism is making that happen. But even dropping fine lines, which I've always kind of struggled with pens, this thing does fine lines, 5 lines, 15 lines. It's very coil-like in the sense that even when you come up at the end of a line, you see that line gets a little thinner and you can get your little dots on the edge like you would with a coil. Really cool. Yeah, the line work is amazing on this thing. And the color is super fast and super efficient too. So one thing I do like about this is these battery packs at Derb sells. You can get them from True Tattoo Supply. Mm-hmm. These things are like $50. So you don't need anybody's proprietary bullshit that's like $150, $200 for a battery. For what? Something happens to this battery, you're not going to really feel too bad about dropping another $50, you know? This thing's fully compatible with the motor that he chose.
Yeah, same.
So,
oh yeah, I got it from you, Howie. I saw you using it.
I'm not sure what the mic is making this sound like to you guys, but this machine, it's got a really nice hum to it. And when it's loaded up, it's even quieter. You can have a conversation with your client. It's not aggressive and loud and annoying. The vibration in it, there's a little bit of vibration, but it's not a lot at all. At no point during like a 7-hour session do I feel fatigue in my hand because of it. It's very mild.
So hand speed and machine speed are no longer a factor, basically.
You know,
it was always the rule was like
hand speed and machine speed should always correlate, I would say, especially with line work if you want the line to be solid. But there's no hanging. There's no extra hang time in the skin. And one of the things that Carson talks about with this machine is, say you have a rotary that's a 50-50 already, but it's a machine with a give. You know, if you're hanging in the skin a little more, you could be in the skin for like, 55, 60% of that cycle, man. That's kind of a long time unless you move really slow. So I think the idea is if you're going to move along quicker too, to have it pop in and out of the skin that fast, you're not causing extra trauma. Okay. As I have a Scorpion pen, which I love too, for shading, and that's more of a slosh plate. So that thing's in the skin a really long time. And no matter what, working with that machine, I always have more blood in the process. And it's probably
that's my favorite liner, that Scorpion.
The Scorpion's a great like that. You love it.
I suspect with that Numa, the healing would probably be great. It'd probably be a lot less scabbing and bleeding.
Yeah, there's hardly any blood in the process, which almost had me concerned. Like, tattooing, I've been tattooing 20 years, and I knew it felt right in my hand. I knew the vibration felt right. In my stretching hand, everything felt the way it should, and so little blood came back. I was almost concerned, like, oh crap, am I getting the penetration I need to get on this thing? And everything's super solid.
Yeah. As soon as I saw the diagram on that thing, that's what really got me going. I'm a huge proponent of technique, for tattooers, and a lot of it has to do with being more mindful of, like you were saying, the hand speed, matching your hand speed with the actual. Maybe not the voltage, but the cycles per second that your machine is running. So it's really important to know how fast it's running. I buy rotaries and try out all kinds of new ones, and I have a hard time getting information on exactly how fast the thing's running. I can get voltage, obviously, but you can't get the CPS. I like that with that one, that kind of doesn't matter. If it's actually spending that much less time in the skin, it's probably putting more ink and doing less damage, but also you can kind of be a little freer with your hand speed. You might be able to get a little more kind of personality out of the work. It might even be free to double up on some of the lines with a little less damage. I think it could be a game changer, but I really want to try something out.
That's one of the things that I did notice was with machines that spend more time in the skin, it's definitely harder for me to get a blend and gradation. If I want to like whip something out and want that whip to kind of gradate out to nothing, I have a harder time doing that with a swash plate than I do even with a direct drive. So this one, it's in and out so quick. You can really build and blend fast, but solid. I was working on a piece right before shutdown that I got twice as far in a piece. I did like a lower forearm and outlined and shaded an upper arm in about 6.5 hours, where I shouldn't have been able to get past just the forearm in 6 hours, So
are you a fast tattooer naturally anyways?
He's a lightning fast tattooer. Crazy fast.
No,
I can't tell if you're being
I've never
No,
been
I'm being serious. He is. I always feel like I'm not working when I'm next to him.
That's only happened. I started tattooing in '98. I'd say that really only started happening maybe 2 years ago at the most. And I'd say over this last year, especially, I picked up a lot of speed. The Scorpion pen doubled my speed, and now the Numa added even more efficiency to my process. I don't feel like I'm moving fast, but the machine isn't slowing me down, if that makes sense. Like there's no hurry in the back of my mind, like, let's get this damn thing done. You know what I mean? But I'm able to move along comfortably, almost like if I was working on a different medium, like just pen and marker on paper, you know, like just having a good time. But the machine isn't dictating the speed that I'm allowed to operate at, which I like.
Yeah, and I think that's going to free up people to not really have to wrestle with the technical part and allow, anything that allows us to be a little more comfortable with just being an artist and focusing more on that is going to make everybody's lives a lot better.
Yeah,
Melissa Sink is answering them for you.
Okay.
Somebody asked what your preferred product is and asked who makes the silicone-based weight loop. She said send them to S8.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Melissa Sink, for answering our questions. Okay, I just wanted to make sure Emily took over the reading. I couldn't listen and read the comments at the same time. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I like what Coop was just talking about. Like, I'm a meat and potatoes guy myself when it comes to machines. I like no hassle. Let's get to it. I've been using like direct drive machines. You guys know the kind of work I do with the heavy lines and a lot of line weight through it and solid saturation. I just don't want to mess around with different drives and all this kind of stuff. And so something like that might just be ideal. It sounds pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, I think what you're saying is like makes a perfect point. And I think I talked about it in an episode recently. Like, I just used the same machine forever. I mean, like for absolute ever. And I started spending time with Ty and Robin and traveling around with them a lot. And Ty can't walk past the new machine without buying it. And so I didn't know that I was using just the Cheyenne pen. And I didn't know how shitty it was and everything until he told me it was. And then I started trying other stuff. So he's cost me a fortune because now I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess it doesn't do that very well. But to your point, Howie, like you get used to the way something works and you just learn how to make it do what you want it to do, if you spend enough time with it.
Yeah.
A good artist can make anything work,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shouldn't have to kill yourself over it, though.
Sorry. And then Emily just reminded me Cheyenne's on the main stage right now, so I don't mean to say it. I've used the Cheyenne pen forever. Sorry. It worked great for me.
What a great machine. No, but in all seriousness, I've always been a fan of Carson's innovative nature when it comes to tattoo machines. I give him credit fully for Rotaries making the comeback that they did with that Numa 2. I wasn't a fan of the Numa Hybrid at all, but even though it was a better machine, I really liked the Numa 2, man. That thing was cool back in the day. So when he came back on the scene with this, I'm like, you know what? This guy really didn't disappoint. So let me check it out. And I'm really glad I did because it's still mind-blowing to me. The build quality on this thing is amazing. It's really, the machining is beautiful, but the simplicity of it, there's literally nothing going on in this machine. How he dialed something that works so well into 2 parts, and you don't even need tools to change the cam, and you're not limited to the 4mm that's fixed on the machine or the 3.5, and that's how it comes, and deal with it. He's working on a 4mm now, but I'm going to like that extra length on that 4mm for lining big lines, just because I want to be able to move fast. I like to leave a little more needle hanging out, and as fast as I can move now with this 3.6, it's just mind blowing to me how well a 3.6 drops a 15 round liner. But yeah, his stuff is pretty rad, and I'm excited, and I know Howie, you'll love this thing, man. Everybody will give it a try, especially if you've been tattooing a long time and used anything other than a rotary. You're going to realize the difference that something more coil-like is going to, give you.
Yeah, no, my interest is peaked for sure. I've been tripping out a lot lately on how small machines are getting too. I was had a buddy hit me up the other day about my daily driver. I use the Quadrants Proton pen. I'm still using that thing. I've been using it for years. I love it. I just got a new one recently. It's updated version. It's awesome. But so my buddy had hit me up about it, and I just wanted to send him a link from our US website that would ship to him. When I went and looked, lo and behold, they came out with another version, which was almost like comparable to that size right there, or like the Bishop one that just came out. I can't think of the one. Yeah. And they're so small now. they're just getting smaller and smaller and smaller. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean,
the back of the wand almost sits inside of my hand. Like when I hold it, it almost doesn't come onto like this part of my hand. It's crazy.
It's like it's a grip only.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of cool too, because it just seems like in terms of like how it rests and like, you know, the ergonomic factor in that, it just seems like, at least in my head, I haven't used one that size yet, but I feel like it makes sense. I've held the wand, but I just haven't worked with it. It just feels like it makes sense, you know, size-wise, diameter, all of it seems like it kind of like a cohesive package that just kind of works. I think they're onto something. I love
the size and the weight. Yeah, I love the size and the weight of the wand. I like the circumference of it. It's like it's heavy enough. It's like the perfect feeling machine to me. Because everything else I've used, like I love that Ty. I actually have my Scorpion I bought from Ty, and I wrap everything in Coban. I don't use the disposable grips that much. I just use the straight grip and put a sleeve over it and wrap it in a bunch of Coban. And I always wrap it in Coban to a size that's basically the size of the wand. So like I don't know how much Coban I waste trying to get the grip.
That's quite a bit.
yeah, just trying to get the grip of the Scorpion up to the size of the wand. And the wand, the Bishop wand, I can just put like one wrap of Coban on it, and it's the perfect size.
The one drawback for me on the wand is their shader wand. That one is battery compatible. Their 5.0 and their Packer wand, they don't work with this battery very well at all.
Really?
They fluctuate. You can hear the fluctuation. You can feel the fluctuation. I sent my first one back thinking it was a dud. They replaced it. No questions asked. I think I was one of the first people to send it back with that problem. So they assumed it was the motor. And then when I got the second one, called them up and said the same thing's happening. It turned out that they knew at that point it wasn't compatible with most batteries. I think there's a bigger battery out there that might work with it, but at that point they were saying, it's just not compatible. They were saying the language isn't the same, whatever that means. But it just wasn't, I guess the battery just didn't have enough to push it. Small brushless motor versus, a brushed motor. And I think that's what the thing that this is I believe this is a brush motor he's using in this. Yeah. And that it's so great with the battery. I think that's the difference altogether is some brushless motors aren't battery compatible.
Hey, Ty, I'm really curious. I'm really curious how that thing does with larger groupings. The main thing for me, the problem we always have, I guess, when we're using large stuff. I really like to line with a 14 or an 18 when I can, and anything. Even when you have a machine dialed in really well, you've got the rubber bands, the arc and the needle, everything set just right. It still is always going to spit a pretty good amount. I'm wondering, with that cam being set up the way that it is does that make the spitting better or worse or any difference at all?
So like I said, I only did a handful of tattoos before the shutdown, but I was using a 15-round shader from Quadron and no spitting issues whatsoever.
Wow, that's great.
I think even though it's like it is in and out fast, it's still a sine wave. So unlike the Dan Kubin, where you've got that tremendous momentum hitting the pin on the frame, and that's where you get all the spitting from with the Dan Kubin. It's unavoidable. It's just the inertia, of that quick snap at the end is going to make everything spit. Where this is going in and out quick, but it's still never smacking something dead solid and stopping. It's just cycling super fast. So maybe that's why I didn't have any issues with the spitting at all.
I had the same issue with the Cuban and any large grouping I've ever had. Yeah. But, I know it's the nature of the beast. I'm not, it's not probably going to make a huge difference either way. But I know that if that does seem to slow down the spitting, even if not fully stop it, that could be a game changer for people who like large groupings.
Yeah. I agree with that. I did have a lot of more spitting with the Bishop wand, but now I think that is because the way that direct drive, basically the Bishop wand, if you open it up.
I tried the Bishop, and it wasn't for me.
I've got one right here. So when you open it up, it's like, it's a magical pen, right? Now it's just a brushed motor with a direct drive built into it upright. It's got a massive counter, but the whole thing's aluminum. So, even though you got a straight up and down movement here. You're still doing a little teetering side to side, which
it's still going to slow down at the point of impact. Yeah.
Which directly correlates to a little twisting motion at your cartridge. This machine, no matter what I do, I'm still getting like tiny little wiggles and walks here and there in my line work. Where with the Numa, the Numa is 100% linear with that pin that sits inside this cam. There's no side to side slop or wiggle at all, and I think that's contributing to what.
Well, I think a big thing that people miss with the rotary and any kind of rotary, the motion is not what most people think it is. I mean, it's really good for coloring, but if you look at the stroke vertically, it's moving faster in the middle. It's moving faster in the middle. It slows down at the point of impact, and it slightly speeds up on the way up again. But it's not necessarily conducive to tattooing, or at least not to lining. It works great for shading. It works great for coloring. But the cam on that thing makes it where it has a little more of a the burst rather than slowing down as it's hitting the skin. That's why it caught my attention from the start. So I'm really hopeful. I'm gonna have to get my hands on one of those pretty soon. Give you a better review.
What was it retail for?
Shit. I think it was 600, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And I know the stainless grip is more expensive, but it is nice, He's doing a lot of the work himself too. I'm sure once he gets up and running and it gets bigger, he'll have to bring in some help, but he's doing all his own buffing and polishing and everything, Carson. So,
wow.
Yeah. I talked to him quite a bit when it first came out, just based on, what makes a machine better than other machines, like what's up with the technology. And he told me before I even bought it, he's like, if you really like that Numa 2, this is my best work. And, naturally any salesman would tell you it's his best work, but he's never been a salesman-y kind of guy. So I'm like, you know what? If this guy's really that confident, man, and he put his heart into this thing, let me give it a crack. And I'm super pleased and really glad that I did it, because he did do something different here. He brought something completely different to the table that we really needed, and there's no fluff. And that's what I like about it. Carson didn't come out with something that has, it's like $1,200 with a built-in battery, and you got to buy a second $500 battery if you want to get a 6-hour tattoo out of it. This is his machine, and you can put whatever the fuck you want on top, man. That's great, That's one of the big sellers for me, is like, I'm not stuck buying the rest of your shit just because I want your machine, And I think he did it right. He thought of the tattooer first,
That's how the Scorpion, right? Like it's all proprietary for the most part, right?
I love it, but that's my drawback for that was like, hey, I'm stuck with these batteries. I haven't had a failure with the Scorpion battery. They are nice. I'm
using that same battery with the Scorpion.
And
I don't have any trouble with it.
No, it's a brushed motor, so you can. It actually fits really nice on the Scorpion too, because their connection's this way. So on the Scorpion pen, it's sitting exactly like this.
Mm-hmm.
I remember we did a bad tie when we were at Hell City that one year. We did I don't know if you can hear me at all or not.
Yeah.
I was looking at you. I have the Scorpion in the other room.
we did that. We did a battery comparison, if you remember, because you had just bought the which one you got? The yellow, the brass colored ones that you got, remember?
And the Nucleus batteries.
Right.
That's what it was. That's the one.
Those are like, all right.
Those are
the silliest, overpriced, weakest battery money could buy. Sorry, everybody. But yeah, it's got, even the interface that they put on it, it doesn't have like a step voltage. Like this isn't even a step voltage, man. Like you're going 6.1, 6.3, 4, it's just, I think everyone else is doing like either a 0.2 or 0.5 increment. Like what if I want to roll at 7.2? Why do I have to go to 7.6? Let us go in regular steps. So that Nucleus battery, it doesn't even have voltage. It had I think it was 4
conversion chart or
4
something.
through 19 on a conversion chart. And you're like, hey, what do you run your machine at? 12. 12 what? 12 volts? No, number 12. Come on. That's never been a part of our life in the tattoo industry. What was that all about? It was just, I think the component was already existing for something else, and they just slapped it in there because they could make that battery small and compact. One thing I do like about that battery is it's completely symmetrical all the way around, so it sits nice and straight on the top. But other than that, like, there was no power to it. And that's what we were comparing side by side. We were comparing the Scorpion power with the boost mode to the Nucleus battery.
That's what it was.
Yeah. And I could feel my machine really bogged down when I was using that Nucleus. It just didn't have enough juice to keep it running. As soon as we put the Ink Machine's battery on, that thing was full bore. You couldn't even get it to bog.
Yeah. I had just got those, the Amazon, well, they weren't even, Derb didn't even have them yet. I had just got them from Amazon for like $40 or something. And then I remember Derb came by my booth and he's like, "Where did you get those?" And I was like, "Dude, Amazon, $40.
So this
and like a week later, they were on his website.
Howie's the guy that introduced us to all of this batteries.
Yeah. Anyone else asking questions I need to look at or no? Okay, cool. All right. Nothing important, just dumb questions, she says. That's not what she said.
That's one.
Robin, have you tried to use the Numa, or are you still just staying with
I didn't have a chance to because of the whole shutdown, but he's very on board for me to get one. So
yeah.
My hang up for her is she loves a foot switch, and I gave up the foot switch ages ago, and I love not using a foot switch. And she just doesn't feel comfortable not having that control to shut that thing off. I guess like afraid of leaving it running and sticking herself, so I can't.
That's terrible.
I know, but like I can't really, take that away from her. Hey, if you don't feel as comfortable tattooing without a foot switch, how do I say stop using a foot switch,
Mm-hmm.
But I personally feel like once you, forget about the foot switch, a week, 2 weeks later, you don't miss it.
Mm-hmm.
No, I was the same. I did not want to get rid of that thing forever. And then I finally did it, and there was a little bit of an adjustment period, but once I was done with it, I never looking back on that. Good riddance.
For sure.
Done.
My biggest hang up was just having to clean that damn thing all the time. Even if you bag it and you put a clipboard bag over the cable and stuff. You ever see your like sneakers after some tattoo sessions, man? Like, you don't want to be touching something that's literally covered in ink and fucking spray, man, So for me, keeping all that stuff off the floor and not draping it over the counter, that was a huge benefit for somebody with OCD.
Plus,
I took the foot pedal I have, and I've got one of those remote ones, the Criticals, and I just put it up on the side so you can kick it.
That's cool. So
I just need to switch on and off. Just leave it running, and So I just kick it when I want to start. It's out of the way. It never gets dirty, and then still foot operated, so I don't have to mess with nothing else with my hands. But it's out of the way.
Yeah, that's actually pretty cool. See, all of us were brought up in a time where momentary wasn't a thing. If you took your foot off the foot switch, your machine stopped running. Mm-hmm. So I never even realized later on down the road that was an added feature because I had already abandoned the foot switch by that point.
Yeah, I saw my friend Matt Russo in Colorado doing that like probably almost 20 years ago, and I just thought he was fucking crazy for it. And there I was. I actually stopped doing it like about 3 or 4 years ago. More than anything, I found out it was causing a little bit of a back issue for me. Just sitting at a slight angle, having one hip up a little bit. It doesn't seem like much, but throughout a day when you're moving around, when I got rid of it, a lot of the issues I was having with my back, I would say cut in half. So it doesn't seem like it'd be a big deal, but it's a little tiny thing. It gets at you. It's like sitting around with a giant wallet under one butt cheek. You're just a little off center all the time,
And then once you get rid of that thing, it's just less moving parts and less wires and less just cumbersome to mess with. Like, you know what I mean? Can we just, for me, like I said earlier, I'm meat and potatoes. So if I could just dumb it down to like from this to that, I'm good. The less I have to think, the better off I am.
I've always said that about you.
Hey, simple things for simple minds.
How you feel about the foot switch is the same way I felt about losing the cord when I got that Ink Machine Scorpion pen. That was the first wireless experience for me. And not having to constantly bounce back over to the table and, give it one of these when I'm working on a client and, give it a big yank and try to get some room over here. Then I'm rolling my closer because I just don't have enough. You do a lot of things with your body in that position when you're attached to a cable as well as the foot.
Yeah, that's a big one. I haven't made that jump yet, but is what I do right now is I set up an extra armrest or a bench so I have my ink caps right in front of me, basically between my legs, so I don't have to twist. I just go, or if somebody can be trusted well enough, I'll just set the ink cap on them as I'm working. And I save a lot of time. I actually found that you don't think that would add up to a lot. The time you stop, wipe, readjust, all that. If you know where you're at and your ink cap is just right here, you don't even have to wipe to keep going a lot of your work. You can just, I feel like I added maybe 15, 20% effectiveness just from that.
That's cool.
I mean, I don't know that people want to ground down that much more each time. They might want that little rest in between, but I like it.
Yeah, I switched over to that. I forget who introduced it. Ty, you and I were set up next to someone in at Evergreen last year before that had that ink arm, and I bought that thing. And so I can it's basically just like an articulating arm that I can just pull out to wherever I am, and it's magnetic. It's really like 4 pretty strong magnets, so you could drop. It comes with a small tray, but you could drop like a baking sheet on it if you wanted, and pull it wherever you want.
That sounds like what I need then.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
At Due South, you had that, and I kept.
Yeah, I brought it with me when we were at Due South, and so I love that thing because I can set it right beside me. And also, since I moved to battery, I'll end up walking around. I have people laying down a lot, and so I'll end up kind of pulling that ink arm out, and then because I'm all battery, I have no cords. I'll walk around the table and work, not intentionally, and I just end up kind of in my own world, and I'll walk halfway around.
That. That's great. Do you have that thing handy, or do you know the name so you can give them a plug?
It's called I think it's theinkarm.com. And I mean, they're not sponsors or anything like that. I don't have it here. I'm at home, but the only thing, I travel with it, and it's steel, so it's kind of heavy. I mean, it collapses down fairly small. It's not real big, but it's a lot of weight. And if you're always hitting the maximum weight when you're getting on a plane, like I always am, I'm always overweight getting on a plane. It can be a pain for that. But if you're driving to shows or if you're just using it at home, it's great.
Yeah, that's what I need for sure.
It is theinkarm.com. Yeah.
Jake, I got a question for you.
Oh,
do what?
I got a question for you. Was it the physicist that was helping you out? The guy you were telling me about, is that the guy that was speaking off camera, like Dr. Claw in your video?
Yeah. He doesn't want to be seen.
Yeah. I was kind of curious about that. I mean, I definitely, I love the stuff that he's coming up with, but I would like to actually I'd like to be able to find out a little more about him and what he's doing. I don't doubt his abilities, but it always makes me wonder what's going on if somebody doesn't want to be seen, if somebody doesn't want to be seen.
He's
I don't know.
He may be watching this. I'm going to say this in the nicest way possible. He's out there. He is. I mean, you can hear listening to his voice, and he's a biophysicist, just an absolute brilliant guy, but quirky, just a quirky guy. In fact, I've known him for years, and he used to try to feed me information and say, you should talk about this on your show. And I would say, well, give me some notes and maybe I can decipher it. I could never even dumb it down enough to present it. And it took me years just to get him to for us to hear his voice. He just doesn't want to be seen or heard, I guess.
Yeah, but, I get it. But for me, all of us, any of us who've been around for a while, have seen so many interlopers of different types. I'm not saying that that's what he is, but just people who have nothing to do and have no skin in the game, coming in and trying to get involved in some way. And, I don't doubt that he's genuine with what he's trying to offer, but, it always does kind of rub me the wrong way. And somebody's like, well, I don't want to be seen with those guys. I don't want my friends to know I talk to these people. I don't know if that's what's going on with him, but if anything that leaves that kind of vibe, makes me not want to do business with him a little bit too. At least be wary. I wouldn't say not want to, but I was curious what his deal was for sure.
Yeah, he's quirky for sure. Super smart, really engaged and interested, in tattooing. He's not he actually got into tattooing because his son who's in his mid-20s now, got interested in it when he was in his teens. So he started kind of diving in and learning a little bit here and there. And with his background, he was like, oh, well, look, I mean, he's looking at whatever was on YouTube at that point in time, if it was even YouTube. And he's like, oh, they're using green soap and Vaseline? That's ridiculous. And so he's just with his basic knowledge, he was like, that's stupid.
He's actually tattooing a little bit.
So he started, but I don't know how much he wants me to say, but he owns, or he is a partner in Spirit, so the paper we all use. So he's and then he started S8. Which is like the red stencil, and so there, a lot of people don't know that, but it's the same company. They don't care if you buy red or purple stencils; it's the same company. But that was kind of his first experiment. He was like, it's kind of dumb to have purple stencils. You can't see a black line through a dark purple stencil. And then so he came out with a red, and that was kind of the first thing that he did, and that's been several years back now. I actually met him through Russ Abbott. He and Russ were working together. He had a lot to do with Russ's color wheel. If you ever saw the Abbott color wheel he put out,
it sounds like he's fairly invested then.
Yeah.
It sounds like he's fairly invested in the industry. Like I don't know if even if he is actually tattooing or not, I guess it doesn't really matter so much.
No, he doesn't tattoo.
But it's just good to know that it's not somebody who is pulling that kind of thing. It's like, do this thing, but just don't tell anybody I'm involved.
Right.
That kind of thing. But whatever, it's cool. If he brings us great stuff, I don't care. But if I met him, I'd have to give him a hard time for sure.
Yeah. I think if nothing else, he poses a lot of interesting questions, and
that's great. Yeah,
has interesting ideas. So I hope one day I can get him to show his face. We'll see.
Cool.
Sean, if you're watching, show your face.
Or he can just go the full 9 yards and just do like a rock rabbit or any of those. Just do a full mask all the time.
Yeah.
Paper bag or something. That'll be sick.
Jake, tell us a little bit about the silicone.
Say it again.
The silicone-based ointment. Tell us a little bit about that, because back in the day, silicone wasn't safe. What's the difference between this type of silicone? Because when you're putting this stuff under the skin, the silicone, it's getting dispersed through your bloodstream, your capillaries, right?
Yeah. No, we had that discussion, and don't get me lying about it. I'm not. I just turned the cameras on. But yeah, I asked him about that. I was like, weren't silicone breast implants like killing people? And I can get you that answer. I don't want to lie. I don't want to say that I know. But he says that silicone is inert. It won't have any effect. I don't know what it was about the breast.
You end up passing it, I suppose. Like
they have silicone, dare I say it, anal lube and all that.
Right. That's true. Yeah.
It is. It's I was thinking if they make a product that you can put on your on your goods like that's silicone based. I don't know.
Are you injecting it into your goods though? You're injecting it into somebody else's goods, right?
Right.
What I can do? See, that's why I don't always think about what I'm saying before I say it. Sometimes words just come out.
If we've got about another 30 minutes or so left on this, can we change gears just a little bit and talk about what I don't want to spend too much time on.
Hey, thanks again for watching. If you haven't already, we ask that you would subscribe to our channel so you can stay up to date with new episodes. Also, if you've gotten any value out of our show at all, we would be honored if you would buy us a beer at our Patreon link. And finally, if you'd like to visit our website and sign up for our newsletter, you can find out where we are going, if we're going to be in a town near you, maybe tatting at a convention or something like that. And while you're there, you can pick up some Fireside merchandise like a new t-shirt or a hoodie or a coffee mug. Thanks again.